Hi, Misfits. This is Kevin.
And this is Kate.
Welcome to Horrorwood.
That was a very serious introduction.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So here we are in January, the bleakest month of the year.
It feels bleak this year, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. I'll be glad when January's done.
I think so too. And we just had the big polar vortex. It was freezing.
It was very cold.
Very cold. Very cold.
Like in the negatives.
Negatives.
And that's, it happens.
Shit happens.
We made it through. We're doing great.
How does Frankie handle polar vortex?
She didn't love being outside for long. And obviously we for safety reasons, can't have her out for very long. But she loves to be outside. So what I would do is I would just open the balcony door.
Yeah.
Just so that she could feel how cold it is.
Yes.
And she'd be like, you know what? I am good inside.
Coming back.
Yep.
Does she have a coat or anything?
Obviously.
Oh my God.
Have you not seen her cute
I don't think
coat?
I've seen her coat.
Oh, I'll show it to you.
Yay.
It's so good.
That's amazing.
So before we get into this episode, I do want to give a slight update on a case that I covered right from the very beginning. I want to say it was in August of 2022. It was the deaths of Christy Giles, who was a model, and Hilda Cabrales Arzola, who was an architect. And David Pierce and Brant Osborne are currently on trial for their murders. A brief summary. They were two girls who were out having a girls' night out, just having fun. Drugs were involved. They were invited back, I should say, to this guy's apartment just to kind of keep the party going. They went. But about 10 minutes in, one of them texted to the other, "Let's get out of here," or something to that effect. And something just wasn't right. They didn't feel safe, or they just felt like they needed to leave.
Sure.
So Christy had texted that to Hilda. Hilda said, "I'll call an Uber. It's 10 minutes away." The girls never made it into the Uber. And on security footage, we see the men carrying out their bodies.
Oh, man.
So that trial got started January 9th, and I believe it finishes up this week. So I don't want to say too much about it because we'll wait until everything wraps up to give a full update. But I do want to just say that we will update you guys on that case. It's been such a long time because I believe it happened in 2021. So they've waited a while to be able to take this to trial. And hopefully these guys are locked up. I will say Brant Osborne, he was an actor. David Pierce was a film producer. Brant Osborne was on trial for accessory after the fact. David Pierce is on trial for murder.
Got it.
As well as 7 counts of sexual assault unrelated to this case from several years.
Oh my God.
So he's not a great guy, let's say.
Right. So let's just put them away and not think about them again.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we do have to think about them again once we finally get the verdict on their case. But we will let you know what it is and give you, a bit more in-depth update on that when we get there.
Okay.
On fun news, we have a new Patronian.
Patronian.
So I believe her name is pronounced Marty.
Marty.
Could be Marthy. I'm going to go with Marty.
I like Marty.
I also like Marthy, if that is how it's pronounced. But either way, thanks for joining our Patreon.
Thanks for joining. Yay. Welcome.
And I think I mentioned last week about you can also sign up on the Patreon app. Well, apparently Apple charges a 30% fee if you sign up on the app because they have this new Apple tax. I don't know that it's new. I think it's been around for a few months.
I had no clue.
So just sign up on the website.
Yeah.
If you want to join Patreon, patreon.com/Horrorwood
Podcast.
And for our Patreons, we do have your creepy Valentines coming.
Kate just showed them to me and they're amazing. You better wait for Valentine's.
You'll have to
with bated breath.
So we'll get those out soon. And we also got some answers to our question last week.
Where would you haunt?
Yeah, Kevin did the Keith Albee Theater, a haunted theater. And so we wanted to know where you would haunt when
you cross. Pass. Move on.
Die.
I wasn't going to just say it like that, but I love it. Where would you haunt when you perish?
Exactly. So we have a couple here. Do you want to go first?
Yes.
Pick whichever one you want.
I'll do Alien Shape.
Okay.
So Alien Shape on our Patreon said, if I were to haunt anywhere, it would be a comedy club in the Seattle area. I just think that if I'm dead, I could use a laugh.
I hear that.
Yeah, same. Also, it would be awesome to heckle comedians.
I definitely would love to laugh in the afterlife. I want to be partying it up.
Absolutely.
Tiffany Caldwell says she would haunt her grandmother's house in Port Huron, Michigan, as well as the Green Parrot Bar in Key West. I love the two ends of that spectrum.
Grandma's house and a bar in Key West. Tiffany, I love it.
I love it, and I want to know what happens at that bar.
Yeah.
Must be pretty good.
Oh, it must be fun.
Yeah, I love when we hear from our listeners.
Me too.
And keep sending in your comments, guys.
Yeah, and you can always send us an email at horrorwoodpodcast@gmail.com.
We're just getting all the contact info out.
Everything done right at the top, you know?
All right, listeners. I want you to picture yourself living in Los Angeles in 1941. You're still recovering from the Great Depression, and America's inevitable entrance into World War II is looming.
Yikes.
You need work, and you hear about a film starring Hollywood heartthrob Errol Flynn and the incomparable Olivia de Havilland.
Oh, shit. Heavy hitters.
They need a lot of extras because they'll be shooting huge battle scenes. So you go to Warner Brothers, the studio producing the film, and you say, I want to be in the movies. And Warner Brothers says, great, do you have any experience? And you say, none. And they say, great, can you ride a horse? And you say, don't know, never tried. And they say, great, no problem, you're hired.
OSHA laws could never today.
So with no filming experience or skills in stunt work, you gleefully accept your $5.50 daily pay to ride full speed ahead on horseback alongside at least 100 other untrained extras with no filming experience or skills in stunt work for the epic battle scenes in the unfortunately and ironically titled war movie, They Died with Their Boots On. We're going to talk about the accidents, the injuries, and the deaths that occurred on this film. And I'm actually surprised that more people didn't die than those that did, given the conditions they were working under. Mm-hmm. The making of They Died with Their Boots On originally began as a favor to a friend. Old newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst.
Yep.
Who called himself Randy. I don't think I knew that before researching this. And he's come up several times in our episodes.
Yeah.
Old Randy Hearst wanted to help out one of his editors, Thomas Ripley. Not to be confused with the talented Mr. Ripley,
just gonna say.
who's also named Thomas, but is fictional. Editor Thomas Ripley was very much real. Ripley had written a biography on infamous outlaw John Wesley Hardin, a racist, heartless murderer who loved killing people and had been doing so since he was just 15 years old.
Gosh, darn. Any relation to Ripley's Believe It or Not?
It's spelled differently.
Okay. I want to know that Ripley.
Maybe we'll do an episode on it.
I remember I went to Myrtle Beach with my mom once. It was after my parents got divorced. Mm-hmm. And so my mom and I drove down to Myrtle Beach from West Virginia, and she was dealing with her own stuff in the hotel room most of the time. So okay. You know how.
Understandable.
Right. So I was like, well, I'm going to go out and do stuff. I was 13. So I went to the beach, and then they had all these Ripley's Believe It or Not experiences.
Ooh.
And one was an aquarium where I picked up a horseshoe crab, and it tickled my fingers with its thingies. I don't know what they're called. Claws.
Thingies.
And then there was a haunted house, a Ripley's haunted house. And then, of course, like the museum itself.
Sure.
Anywho.
I went to a Ripley's in Gatlinburg, and that was really cool. And there's a Ripley's in LA. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. I wonder if they still are everywhere.
I think
because there used to be that TV show too, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, totally different from what you're talking about.
But that's okay. Ripley.
Believe it
or not. So Ripley's subject, John Wesley Hardin, like I said, horrible, horrible man.
Killing people right out the gate.
Yes. The title of this biography was They Died with Their Boots On.
Okay.
Wasn't exactly a bestseller. Like, it sold some copies, but it wasn't some huge hit. But since Randy Hurst was good friends with Jack Warner of Warner Brothers fame, he said, "Hey, Jack, I think this book would be a great film." And Jack said, "Hey, Randy, since you've given us a shit ton of money and you funded the construction of our largest soundstage, anything for you, buddy." So Warner's makes a deal with Ripley and says, "Congrats, we're making your movie." But when the book got into the hands of the studio's writers, they were like, "What is this?" John Wesley Hardin was a terrible person who spent the last half of his life in prison. Why are we making a movie about him?
I mean, yeah.
The story editors went to WB executive producer Hal Wallace and said, "We get it. It's a great title. We know, but maybe we find a different subject for the film." So the studio asked the writers to find a topic had to be a Western drama that would fit that title.
Okay.
And they decided on the life of George Armstrong Custer and the battles he was involved in leading up to the Battle of Little Bighorn, sometimes referred to as Custer's Last Stand. One of the writers, Wally Klein, told EP Hal Wallace that he and the other writers wanted to make sure this film would be a boost to public morale. It was only a matter of when, not if, America would enter World War II. Thousands of young people were being trained for war, so Klein and his colleagues wanted to make a film that showed the bond between an officer, Custer, and his regiment that would inspire U.S. soldiers. This in turn led to a lot of historical inaccuracies.
Yeah, sounds like it might.
An article in The Guardian by Alex von Tunzelmann.
I love that name.
Me too.
Von Tunzelmann.
I love any kind of Von.
Yes.
That came out in 2009 calls the film a, quote, shameful whitewashing of history.
Wow.
Which honestly is a lot of those movies from that time period.
Yeah, it really is. Liberties have been taken.
Yes. And he states that there are so many errors that there isn't enough space to list them all. Dates are wrong, events are out of order, details get a little skewed, like it's not really spot on. It's a war film, paints Custer as this big hero, and who better to play him than WB's go-to golden boy, Errol Flynn. Who cares if the story is a true depiction of history? Flynn looks hot in a uniform. Let's make a movie.
I mean, let's do it. Happy Valentine's Day to me, honey.
Kevin's looking at a picture of Errol Flynn right now.
Bazooka. Blah, 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 like the heart
The eyes.
come
Flynn played this type of role a lot. In fact, a film he did in 1936 called The Charge of the Light Brigade sees him as a similar character, also opposite Olivia de Havilland. They partnered a lot.
Okay. These names of these movies, man, like they're very long.
Well, The Charge of the Light Brigade, that was after the Tennyson poem.
Sure.
Why can't I speak? Tennyson poem. Wow, that still sounded wrong. Anyway, y'all know.
It's like there were two piles of dirt at the base of the mountain in Phoenix where once a mermaid lay.
And that's your title.
And that's the title of my memoir. I've always said that.
I've always said it since the beginning of time. Weirdly, these two films, not Kevin's Mermaid in Arizona film, but the Light Brigade and Boots, they're sometimes cited interchangeably. Events that took place in Light Brigade are sometimes associated with Boots and vice versa. And even the deaths I'm going to talk about today are sometimes written about as having occurred in Light Brigade, but going through all my research, I feel I have sifted through what took place and when.
Okay.
So I just say that because anyone out there who's like, nope, that didn't happen, I'm giving you what I got from a gajillion news articles.
Sure.
So, and also a coroner's inquest.
Oh.
It does not help that in Errol Flynn's own autobiography, even he gets simple facts confused, likely due in large part to his drug use and alcoholism.
Or his hot, dumb brain.
I'm not going to go into detail about Flynn's life in this episode because that will be its own separate thing. There's just too much there to try to cram into this one. Suffice to say that by the time filming for They Died with Their Boots On began on July 2nd, 1941, he was an A-list star. Filming was supposed to start a week earlier, but Flynn was going through a nasty divorce, so he had to be in court. So they were already starting behind schedule.
Okay.
I think another reason the two films, Light Brigade and Boots, get mixed up is because they involve a lot of the same people in terms of cast and production, and this includes second unit director B. Reeves Eason. Eason was considered one of the best in the business. He had just finished work on Gone with the Wind before signing up to work on Boots, and he shot the chariot race in the 1925 version of Ben-Hur. And you might have covered this when you covered Ramon Navarro. I can't remember. But when you look into Ben-Hur, you learn that the film star, Navarro, almost died in a chariot crash and that over 100 horses were killed along with a stuntman during the shooting of the chariot race. This was because they used a trip wire known as a running W that would cause the horses to trip and fall as they were running. Because of, there's a big charge and you need that as part of the battle. So that's how they would do it. They would have a wire and have all of these horses just running full force ahead, and so that they would trip and literally fall and tumble to the ground. So many horses were killed.
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
That's horrendous.
It's awful.
I don't think I remember coming across that.
Okay, yeah, it's yikes. Eason used this same tripwire device for the climactic battle scene in The Charge of the Light Brigade, where a reported 25 horses were killed.
These are living animals, people.
Yeah.
They're not just to kill for your...
Oh my God. The animal abuse in Hollywood, especially early 20th century. Yeah. Yikes. This practice would most certainly have continued if it hadn't been for the outcry of animal rights groups and the general public. Because once people started hearing about this, they were like, oh, fuck no.
Yeah, of course not.
After Light Brigade, the U.S. Congress passed laws banning the use of the running W. In 1937, a year after Light Brigade, 13 producers signed the very first Screen Actors Guild contract, ensuring that principal actors receive a minimum pay of $25 a day, extras receive $5.50, and stunt performers receive the highest earnings of $35. I think you could say trouble on They Died with Their Boots On began with the fact that studio head Jack Warner was a big old cheapskate, cutting corners wherever he could. So for They Died with Their Boots On, which would need a couple hundred men on horses for the big battle scenes, he figured it sure would be a lot cheaper to hire extras, experienced or otherwise, over actual stunt performers.
I hate this type of shit. It's giving... This is taking me back to one of my first jobs here in Chicago. I'm not saying what it was.
Okay.
You know what it was and where it was.
Okay. Oh.
This was the type of shit that I would have to do on a daily basis. Is like, how do you cut corners with everything and make it cheap? How do you hire people who are part of unions and pay them the least to call whatever you're doing what it's not. It's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hated doing that shit. It fucking sucks.
Awful.
Don't do it, people. Leave.
So during filming, 3 men were killed. Again, I'm surprised it wasn't more. 1 man died of a heart attack while riding a horse.
Was he just scared?
Well, he might have been old or out of shape. I don't know. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a name for him anywhere.
Oh.
Another man died when he fell from his horse and broke his neck. His name is given as George Murphy, and it was reported that he was drunk. I can't find any solid evidence that that is his name or that he was, in fact, drunk. So I'm just going to say that. But he supposedly did not have horse riding experience, which was the case for many of these men. And he was instructed, according to the studio, to get off the horse, presumably because he was drunk. But he ignored this instruction and then eventually fell. The 3rd man to die was actually a friend of Errol Flynn's named Jack Budlong. In Flynn's biography, he calls this man Bill Meade, which could be for one of 2 reasons. One, he supposedly changed some of the names in his book so as not to upset that person or their loved ones.
Okay.
So he could have done this with Jack.
Right.
Or 2, his years of alcohol and drug use had clouded his memory. He does get some of the details wrong about the incident. For one, he says it happened on Light Brigade, but we know that's wrong because it's documented. There was a coroner's inquest. And I mentioned the Bill Meade thing because one blogger posted it, and of course, several other websites just copied that. So it's all over the internet, like, oh, this extra Bill Meade. It's like, people, let's just fact check. Like,
let's just take it a step deeper.
Yeah, let's look it up.
Get a second source.
So I did find the Budlong genealogy, and it is documented in there. There was a coroner's inquest. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Jack. He was born in New York on February 22nd, 1913, to Milton Budlong Sr. and Jessie Wilson. His name was actually John Budlong, but they called him Jack. It's like Prince Harry, whose name is actually Henry. But they're like, we'll just call him Harry. It's like, just name him Harry.
Wait, really?
Yeah, his name's Henry.
Whoops, what?
It's weird.
Crazy.
Because it's not like shorter.
No, it's like the same amount of letters.
Yeah. They're like, we're going to name him John, but we're going to call him Jack. I don't understand.
This guy's name is Kevin, but we're going to call him Bitch. It's my life.
Yikes. So he had an older brother named Francis, which is why I'm not sure if it's male or female, and it didn't say on this genealogy. It's Francis with an E, which is typically female, especially in that time, but it can go either way. And he had a younger brother named Milton Jr. They were a pretty well-off family. Milton Sr. was a successful businessman. They summered in Rhode Island, so that's the level of wealth that we're talking.
Oh, a summer in Rhode Island today.
Dilly-nay.
What's a short name for Milton? You know what I mean? Like Milty?
Milk? Or probably for a case like this, Maxwell? Because they just
my name's Milton. You can call me Maximilian.
Exactly.
Ludwig.
However, all was not happily ever after in the marriage, and Milton and Jessie divorced in 1928 when Jack was 15. 2 years later, Milton Jr., who was only 13 at the time, accidentally shot and killed his father's housekeeper, 40-year-old Margaret Ahern. Milton had received a .22 caliber rifle for Christmas. Why? Who knows? They had a shit ton of money and they were like, let's give our kid a gun. This should be a Christmas Story situation with a BB gun.
It's not just like a rifle.
And on New Year's Day, he and the housekeeper were out in the yard. Like, she was looking after him. He's 13. And he was playing around with his freaking rifle and pointed it at her and pulled the trigger. The bullet got lodged in her neck, and it was about 10 minutes of her bleeding out before she died. Yeah. The district attorney's office said no legal action would be taken against the boy, which you have to wonder, this was a family with a lot of money, so I wouldn't be surprised if that played into the fact that he didn't receive any kind of punishment.
Payoffs. I'm sure they paid out the family of the housekeeper and all that shit.
Probably. Or it might be like an Alec Murdaugh situation where they say they're going to pay it off, but they don't.
Oh, right. Sorry, I was just going to go along with it. Like, yes.
I know, you just nodded. And I was like,
mm-hmm.
Wait. After Jessie's divorce from Milton Sr., she moved all the way across the country to Beverly Hills. And from what I can tell, the kids went with her.
Okay.
Jack attended college at the University of Arizona, where he was a member of the men's polo team.
And also where my new mermaid story takes place.
There you go.
Tie-ins already.
Yep. It's all coming back. And there's actually a picture of him online with his teammates, which is nice because you can put a face with the name. After college, Jack moved to West Los Angeles and eventually met and married a woman named Vern Rogers.
Now, that's a name of a dancer.
Maybe she was.
Was she? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what her profession was. But if it's up to me, she's a Ziegfeld Follies girl.
Vern Rogers, Ziegfeld Follies of 1912.
The wedding took place on September 13th, 1940, and just a few months later, they found out they were expecting a child.
Nice.
Jack still played polo regularly, which is how he befriended Errol Flynn. They played polo together. Polo was like big among the big actors back then.
Did you ever play polo?
No.
Is polo the one where you have the little things in the ground and the sticks and
you're on a
balls?
horse.
Oh.
You're thinking croquet.
Oh, yes.
But polo, you're on the horse and you're running and you have the thing that you have to like hit.
I remember now, yes.
It's like a rich person's
Well, they play
sport.
it in Pretty Woman, the movie that always comes up in every episode.
Yeah, it's true. It does.
The stomping of the dibbits.
It does come up. Flynn was already super famous by this time. And according to his autobiography, Jack, who he refers to as Bill Meade, remember, really wanted to get into films. He just thought it'd be fun. Flynn said Jack begged him for a part in his upcoming film, They Died with Their Boots On. So he said, yeah, we need a bunch of guys to ride horses in the battle scenes. I think you'd be great. Especially since Jack actually could ride a horse.
Yeah.
I.e. the polo.
The polo.
Jack was needed on the set at the end of July 1941, and this was just 3.5 weeks after his father, Milton Sr., had died of natural causes back on the East Coast. I don't know if he was close with his dad after the divorce, so I'm not sure what effect his father's death had on him. Milton's estate was valued at $5 million back then.
How much is that now?
More than $107 million.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they were rich.
Packing it on vacations in Rhode Island.
And Jack was said to inherit a nice chunk of that. So he didn't need to do this part in this movie. It was just something he thought would be cool and fun, which makes this even sadder.
Yeah.
The scene Jack was a part of was the Battle of Gettysburg. He was going to be riding right alongside Errol Flynn. All of the extras were carrying prop sabers made of wood because sabers were what they used in the actual Battle of Gettysburg.
When you say saber, are you talking like swords?
It's like a sword, but a sword, I believe, is straight, and a saber has kind of a curve.
The curve.
If I'm not crazy. Not big on the weaponry, but...
Oh, that makes sense. Like saber tooth. Like those tigers
there
have
you
those
go.
teeth that are things.
Again, we're making connections here.
Oh my God, Kate, we are learning
so much.
Also, I just imagined, like, what if they were lightsabers in the Battle of the No Shoes?
Battle of the No Shoes.
They died with their boots on.
Jack insisted on carrying a real saber.
No.
This is baffling to me. According to Warner Brothers, Jack wanted to have the real thing. Why this was allowed, who knows? Studios were playing it pretty fast and loose with safety back then. Maybe Errol Flynn told the studio, don't worry about it. He knows what he's doing. We don't know. We don't know why this was allowed. The thing that I also think about is he was right up close with Errol. And Errol did use real weapons. I don't know if he did in this scene, but for his role, because he's got all these close-ups, they were real.
Sure. Well, that would make sense, but for the extra.
Yeah, I just wonder if Jack felt like, oh, well, I'm going to be in the shot and I want this to be authentic. I don't know. Again, it was allowed. Shouldn't have been. But his saber was real. I do want to point out that in each case of an extra in this movie getting killed, the studio always seems to come away blameless. The first guy had a heart attack. We couldn't have prevented that. The second guy was drunk. That's why he fell off his horse. He was definitely drunk, and it had nothing to do with him being inexperienced on a horse. And with Jack, well, he insisted he have a real sword. That was his decision. Like, it's always the extra's fault, according to
the studio.
Yeah. Also, keep in mind, this is just 4 years after the Patricia Douglas case. Oh. So studios knew how to keep things buried, so to speak.
Yeah.
And if you haven't listened to our Patricia Douglas episode, go do it and be prepared to get so angry.
She was on fire, right? Was that the Patricia Douglas case?
No, Patricia Douglas was the girl who was sent to that party by MGM.
Fuck, yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
I confused my actresses.
So on this hot summer day, as the cast and crew began filming the scene, Errol Flynn, Jack Budlong, and 100 other extras on horseback charged forward as director Raoul Walsh yelled, "Action." But when a planned special effect explosive went off during the battle scene, Jack's horse got spooked.
Yeah.
And threw him off. Jack was tossed approximately 15 to 20 feet, dropping his weapon in the fall. But in the most freakish of freak accidents, it landed with the hilt in the ground with the pointed end.
What the
facing
fuck?
Up.
How the fuck does that happen?
Yeah, that's like a 1 in 10 million chance. Jack landed on his own saber, impaling himself. It went through his abdomen and out his back.
Ooh.
And unfortunately, it was not a quick death. He was taken to a hospital where he lived for 5 days before passing away on August 5th from peritonitis, which is when you have inflammation of the tissue that lines the abdomen and protects your abdominal organs, your stomach, liver, spleen, intestines. When this tissue is damaged, such as in the case where you impale yourself on a fucking saber, the infection can get absorbed into your bloodstream, causing sepsis.
I feel like we've talked about that before with Ramon Navarro when he died.
Is that what he had?
I think that's what happened because he had ulcers in his stomach and that led to that.
Ooh, yikes.
I'm
That's
pretty
kind of
sure.
ironic and creepy. Jack's death came exactly 1 month after his father's, who died on July 5th. Jack was just 28 years old.
That's young. And that's a horrible freak way to die.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect that to happen.
No. At the coroner's inquest on August 9th, Jack's mom, Jessie, testified that it took 2.5 hours after the accident for Jack to receive any medical aid, which is probably true. They were shooting the scene on a movie ranch a good 30 miles outside of LA, but they took him to what is now Cedars-Sinai, which is in LA, and that would take a decent amount of time to get to.
Man.
Jack's death was ruled accidental, so Warner Brothers escaped any consequences. 2 days after the inquest, on August 11th, Milton Jr. was riding his bike that morning in LA when a drunk driver hit him, and he died the next day, exactly 1 week after his brother. So their poor mother lost both her sons within a week of each other. I think he was 24, 25.
No comment on Milton Jr.
Okay. And Jack died just a month shy of his 1-year wedding anniversary to Vern. She gave birth to their son, Jack Jr., on December 10th.
God, I forgot about Vern for a second. And we should never forget about Vern.
Don't forget about Vern. But the show must go on. As they say, filming continued despite that 3 people had now died. In August, the 33-year-old Errol Flynn had to go to Catalina Island for a Life magazine photo shoot. Catalina, it comes up. And it was while he was there that he invited a young girl named Peggy Satterley onto his yacht. She claimed that he spiked her drink and raped her. She was 15.
Ew. Okay, I take everything back nice I said about Errol Flynn. Wait. Go into more before I make another decision.
I will, but I'll just go ahead and tell you he's a terrible man.
God damn it.
It sucks because he's so hot.
Why are the hot rich ones always the worst?
Yeah, the worst.
Literally.
Yeah.
You see a hot rich guy, girl, turn around.
Run in the opposite direction.
Turn around, because the moment you engage, you've signed off on your own will, your death.
Yikes. Really escalated to murder there.
Catalina Island. That's where all the hot rich people go, and people end up dead there.
They do,
See?
actually. Yeah. So Peggy Satterley had moved to LA to pursue a career in show business and had some decent work opportunities going for her. So her parents decided to drop the charges for fear it would ruin her career. A year later, Peggy came forward after another underage teenage girl accused Flynn of rape.
Oh, good. Thank God.
He was charged with 3 counts of statutory rape, but was found
Not
not guilty on all 3 charges. Whenever we do cover Errol Flynn in detail, we'll go further into that case because there's a lot to it. And he talks about it in his autobiography and is so callous and says they were asking for it. He's terrible. Because he did have sex with these girls.
Well, yeah.
Even though he was found not guilty, like, he was guilty. When he wasn't sexually assaulting children, he was getting knocked out by his co-star, Jim Thorpe. Thorpe was an extra in the film playing one of the Indians. In real life, he was an Olympic gold medalist and actually the first Native American to win gold for the U.S.
Fabulous.
Yeah, he played pretty much every sport there is. Like, he played professional football. He was on the Giants. He played professional baseball. He was on the Giants. He played professional football. Like, he could play every sport. He played basketball. Like, you name it.
You said Giants in football, and I was like, yeah, that's
well, because there is a Giants football team.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Sure.
Yeah. San Francisco Giants? No.
49ers.
They're the 49ers. I know there's a Giants. New
New York Giants.
You know what? Sports. Just last year, Thorpe was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But he was also known to have a temper. And one night during filming, he was at a restaurant in Hollywood with Errol Flynn. And Flynn had an ego. He thought he was hot shit, and the two of them got into some kind of argument. Thorpe punched Flynn so hard that Flynn's body actually lifted off the ground before falling to the floor. He was knocked completely out.
Oh my God.
Like, it's a wonder that didn't kill him, because Thorpe was like a big guy.
Big dude.
So I'm sure that made working on set together a bit awkward.
Well, it probably didn't do anything nice for his face either.
I don't know where he punched him.
Oh, it could have been in the chest.
Yeah. I mean, because his body went up, so it could have been like an
Tummy
abdomen.
punch.
Yeah. When it came time to shoot the Battle of Little Bighorn, director Walsh was hesitant about doing any scenes where horses would need to fall because there had already been enough catastrophe. But Jack Warner insisted on these stunts. He was like, I don't care if horses or people get hurt or killed, whatever makes my movie look good. And Walsh was like, well, then I'm going to need some actual stuntmen, not extras who have no training for this sort of thing. So Warner was forced to cough up the money to pay for actual stuntmen, which was an exorbitant amount of money and put the production well over budget, which honestly, he should have just done that in the first place and should have just increased the budget.
Yeah.
There was also a representative from the Humane Society on set to make sure the animals weren't being harmed or mistreated.
Thank God, finally.
Walsh wanted the scene to feel authentic and therefore asked for actual Sioux Indians to be included. So the production team went to South Dakota and found 16 men who were willing to come to Hollywood and be in a movie.
Wow.
Of course, they only made the extras day rate of $5.50.
I was going to say, how much did they mistreat them when they got there?
I didn't read anything about mistreatment.
Sure.
But things didn't go smoothly for them. While in town, 3 of them were involved in a car accident. It wasn't their fault, but it was pretty serious. And one of them, Jack Red Bear, ended up in the hospital for several weeks.
Damn.
The studio's publicity chief, Bob Taplinger, wanted to create some buzz for the movie. So he claimed that 2 of the Sioux men working on the set were the great-grandsons of Sitting Bull. I don't know if there was any truth to that. I couldn't find anything to verify that claim. But whether they were or weren't is probably not something they would want publicized because Sitting Bull was one of the ones who helped defeat Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Oh, I see.
It just seems irresponsible of Taplinger because he could potentially be putting them in a vulnerable, if not dangerous position, I would think, or dangerous situation.
Well, without any kind of forethought. Like, that's really shitty of him to do.
Although they had 16 Sioux men participating, this wasn't enough to fill out the battle scene.
Sure.
They needed more Indians for the shot, so they brought in a couple hundred Filipino men, because that's the same.
Yeah.
And then they had the white stuntmen do any stunts needed as Indians. They were just like, okay, can some of you guys play Indians for a second? Sure. Okay. Even with professionals, there were still a lot of injuries on set. Scrapes, bruises, broken bones. It got to the point where Anthony Quinn, who was playing Chief Crazy Horse, hired a hearse to follow the buses carrying the extras out to the ranch. That's pretty fucked up. Imagine being one of those extras who's already seen 3 of your peers literally die, and now there's a hearse following you on your way to work. Because so many people kept getting hurt, the production eventually had 2 ambulances, 2 doctors, 4 first aid men, and a nurse on set just standing by.
This is insane.
Anthony Quinn and Errol Flynn did 2 movies together, and I think it was this one based on when Flynn talks about it in his autobiography, that Quinn accidentally ran a sword through Flynn's doublet and almost took out his eye. Things were just wild.
What is happening?
Flynn ended up having a severe sinus reaction to all the smoke and dust getting stirred up in the battle scenes, and he had to take several days off. Plus, he still had the ongoing divorce court proceedings. But the production was already behind schedule, so they just shot around him. They were like, let's just zoom out. No one will be able to tell he's missing.
It's like, where's Waldo?
Yeah. He's not there.
Where's Errol? At his rape trials.
Well, the rape trials hadn't happened yet. This was the divorce court proceedings.
Sure.
Just to clarify. When filming finally wrapped on September 30th, it was a month behind schedule and $350,000 over budget. 3 men were dead, countless others injured, and although I couldn't find anything stating any horses were killed, according to that article in The Guardian that I mentioned earlier, they say there were likely a large number of horse deaths that just went unrecorded.
Well, yeah, because no one gives a shit about the horses.
And because they've already come under fire for using that wire in the past.
Why would they report it if any died?
Exactly.
Anyway?
The film made Warner Brothers a $1.5 million profit.
All right. Well, they made their money back.
When old Randy Hurst saw it with his mistress, actress Marion Davies, who was a Ziegfeld dancer. See, there it goes.
Gah.
He fucking loved it. He sent Jack Warner a telegram that read, "Greatest film I have ever seen. Went to see it twice with Marion." Fun fact. Another actor in this film in an uncredited role as Lieutenant is Gig Young, who went on to become an Oscar winner and then a murderer. Go listen to the episode. That's it. That is the story of the people that died without their shoes. What was the name you gave it?
I think that might have been it.
They died with their boots on.
They died with their boots on.
Let us know what you thought on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or Spotify at
Horrorwood Podcast.
Or shoot us an email at
horrorwoodpodcast@gmail.com.
And be like Marty/Marthy, but probably Marty, and join Patreon at
patreon.com/horrorwoodpodcast. Don't ride a horse if you don't know how.
And don't just allow people to use fucking real sabers when a prop will do.
Right.